So on that kind of disastrous note, did anybody that you interviewed during any of the shows that we've seen so far say anything to you that could have really been, bad for them to say out loud, or anything that was really surprising that you had to ultimately cut, and hopefully you can tell some of it now, but, that ever happened?
Absolutely. I'll tell you this, man. I've produced a fair amount of shows, and every show I've produced until this one, and even stuff I'm doing now after this, you always want people saying stuff they're not supposed to say or going crazy while the cameras roll.
Very true.
Dude, we interviewed this one guy who's in the show. I mean, he's in the multiple episodes. We interviewed this one guy. He was talking about, he was a Hasbro guy that got basically fired after they bought Kenner. And this guy had a complete and utter breakdown on camera. I mean, crying, face was red, hands were shaking, like his wife had to come into the room. I was tearing up. I mean, it was so horrible. Any other show, that would be in the commercials for the coming attraction. I didn't want this to be that show. I didn't want to make a show that... The interesting thing about toys is it's a happy subject. So, yes, we cover some unhappy things. Barbie was like a thing at stag parties. And, we got into some darker things. But... like another example I'll give you is those four guys who sort of all kind of claim ownership of He-Man. We played it off as like these four guys and it was kind of funny and we goofed around and joked around. Two of those four would murder the other one if they legally didn't have to go to jail. I mean, they hate each other, can't stand each other. And we just toned that down because I didn't want to make a show, and this is what I did. It doesn't mean it was the right thing to do, but it's what I decided to do, for better or worse. I didn't want to make a show where you see these angry, older guys mad about stuff that happened 40 years ago. I didn't think a show about toys where you'd have parents showing it to their kids. Like, I didn't think that's what this show should be about. So we didn't include, like I said, by the way, very similar thing with My Little Pony that happened with He-Man. It has a lot of mothers and fathers. So we're handling it in a funny way, but still communicating the truth, which is she says she invented it, he says he invented it, and we're not taking sides, but we're presenting it, but we're doing it in a nice way. And I'll tell you this, I've subsequently spoken to all those guys from the He-Man episode. They loved the way we handled it. Loved it. A lot of people, not just on He-Man, but a lot of people from a variety of episodes would call us afterwards and be like, hey, man, I know I really went off the rails talking about John Doe, but could you please not use that? I shouldn't have said that. Any other show, I would have been like, tough luck, you signed the release. I'm a TV producer. But this one, I was like, as much as we could, we softened the edges.
That is something I do appreciate about the series, is that it's not really going for blood in the water. It definitely is, keeping things light. Not ever fluffy, but, you're never going into that horrible reality TV red zone, if you will.
Yeah.
So, let me ask you guys also, what has been the most requested toy to do an episode on that hasn't been made yet?
The most requested toys in this order are Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, wrestling, My Little Pony, Power Rangers. That's like black and white. Those are far above everything else. Then after that, it would be Ghostbusters. And then it devolves a little bit after that. Like everything else would be less than 1%. But Turtles was like, why are you doing Star Trek? Why are you doing My Little Pony before Turtles? So that was a big one.
Well, I'm going to throw my head into that one, too. If you don't do real Ghostbusters, I'm going to be very sad.
As I always say, tell Netflix.
Will do.
I feel like we have 20 episodes that would be great. 8 have been shot, 4 are being made. So there's basically, I feel like, 8 more great episodes. And then it starts to get into like shows like the toys that should have not been made. Like stuff that you and I would probably love, but I don't know if everybody would. But definitely in those 8 is Ghostbusters.
Awesome.
But I would argue Ghostbusters should be there because it's such a good story, even though they weren't big toy lines. But, like, we get, Thundercats and M.A.S.K. I'm like, do your research. M.A.S.K. was a disaster. It barely made 3 years. The 3rd year literally had nothing to do with the first 2 years. That's how big a mess it was. And Thundercats, it was 1 year of cartoon. Like, these would be, if we got to do more than 20 episodes, doing an episode like toys you think were big that weren't really big, but they're still cool, that's what that would be.